All right, everybody, what is up? I'm here with Brett Dasovic of, let me see if I can get the name right this time.
No, there's no popcorn. There's no planet. Don't even think about it.
I had to think for a second and then I'm like, oh
Yeah.
no. And then it's like one of those things once you then think about it, it's
Yeah.
like have you ever done that where you've thought of a word, like you've like sounded out a word so many times that you like forget what it means or something?
There one of the hardest parts is like when we're doing the show, I get so worried that I'm gonna pronounce something wrong that then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then I pronounce
Yeah.
it wrong anyways, so it doesn't matter. But hi guys, I can do it. My name is Brett Dasovic. I am one of the hosts of Pop Culture Crisis, Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on YouTube.
All
See?
right, you heard
There we
it.
go.
You heard it there. So, hello everybody. How do we sound? I always worry that one of us is louder than the other. You're not soft. I'm worried I'm the one who's soft
Okay.
tonight. So, somebody tell us in the chat. We'll keep going, but let us know in the chat if one of us is much
Too bad.
louder.
Too bad.
Oh man. Well, we
Kind
took
of
a
like when you watch a movie and the action scenes are really loud and then the dialogue scenes are really, really quiet. Or any Christopher Nolan movie made in the last 10 years where half the movie is garbled and you have no idea what anyone's saying. And they just say it was an artistic choice.
Man, I
Yep.
mean, particularly the time travel one that the Tenet, right?
I got into an argument with people. I said, look, I don't care what anyone says. I like that movie. I have no idea what it means. It made no sense. I don't care. I liked it, and that's fine. Because the news came out this week that he might be directing the next James Bond movie, and he's
Oh,
always
okay.
wanted to do a James Bond movie.
Because Tenet was kind of
So
James Bond,
yeah,
sort
that's
of,
that's
yeah.
what it is. It'll be great. Let him do it. I say.
So I love most Christopher Nolan movies, but almost always find them frustrating at some point. Like Interstellar, I thought it was a beautiful, transcendent movie, but I thought that the last third like made no sense.
Yeah. He I will say that there's a fair argument to be made that he struggles with third acts from
Yeah, there's
time
a
to
fair
time.
argument, I think.
But it's like somebody was saying, like, when I posted, I said, like, I want to see Christopher Nolan get to do James Bond movies because I think that extremely important franchises like James Bond should not be something that we just give to first or second time directors, which is what Marvel has been doing with a lot of their movies, where they give these like famous characters to directors who have like 2 or 3 credits to their name. I want somebody with some gravitas to be handed properties that have got 60 years, 50 years of history. And I would like to see him. And somebody goes, well, now it's just going to be even more pretentious than the last James Bond movie. I said, yes, but who's making the pretentiousness matters. So
I'm sure I've never seen a Christopher Nolan film that I thought was not entertaining as hell to
yeah.
watch, so I'm sure it'll be good. I just want James Cameron to stop making avatars. That
Hey,
is
I didn't mind. I didn't mind Way of Water. I didn't hate it.
Oh my
I didn't
god.
hate it.
You
I
didn't
didn't
hate
hate
it.
it. Look, and that's saying something
Were you
because
not
I mean
ti
it was
were you not
long.
were
It
you
was
not though
long.
kind of like at some point saying, "Okay, I don't need to see that big whale flipping over one more."
I think what it was for me though is like I'm such a fan of trying to spot the bads. I was looking for the one bad CGI shot in the whole movie. So maybe it was like me like watching the whole thing. I'm like, because there's always one, right? There's always
Is
even if a
there?
movie is
Yeah.
crisp, there's usually like one shot where they're like, look, we don't got time. It's just a blue screen of him riding across the ocean. I don't remember there being one like that in that movie, but there shouldn't be if it takes him
There probably
92
isn't. No,
years to
he's
make
like
it.
a crazed perfectionist.
Yeah.
You know what? Like, I don't like, I love the special effects, but, like, I just want a different storyline, a different world. I'm just ready to leave Avatar World or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
So, he did say several weeks ago, you probably heard this, that he had become interested again in artificial intelligence, and he wanted to write a new Terminator movie, and as soon as I heard that, I was like, "Oh, thank God."
No. They need to just leave Terminator alone. They need
James Cameron could do it.
something like here's the thing. I like Terminator 1 and 2. I don't even hate Terminator 3, but I actually really liked the show The Sarah Connor Chronicles, which
Was
was like
that
a
good? I never
it
saw it. Lena
good would
Headey?
be a stretch, but it was Summer Glau. Like I liked it, but it was light fare. But those first two Terminator movies, the only nightmare that I've had in the last year, like I never remember my dreams. I had a nightmare recently where I was like being chased by a raccoon in my car, a giant raccoon, right? And it was the Terminator music from Terminator 1, which is very
It's
synth
great.
because it came out in the mid
Yeah,
80s.
it's great.
And it was extremely disconcerting.
Mhm.
Okay, because that music throws you off. So I've
Mhm.
had like now several dreams that I remember. I never remember my dreams. And I've had several that have been related to that just have to do with me being chased and that music playing.
I love that music. You know what though? I have to admit, I loved Terminator 3. Maybe there's something wrong with me, but I thought, okay, like some parts of it were a little annoying, and I would have just taken Claire Danes out and replaced her with a different actress.
Yeah.
But I thought it had a great ending, and like I was interested the whole time. After that, though, like the one with Christian Bale, that was a total, or not Christian. Yeah, it was a Christian Bale and
Christian
Sam
Bale was
Worthington.
Salvation, and then Genesis was the one after that with Jai Courtney when Hollywood was still trying to make Jai Courtney a thing.
He kind of
The
faded away, huh?
Yeah, they were the only time he ever did anything good was when they had him play Captain Boomerang in the DC universe because he's a dick and Jai Courtney can play a good bad guy, I guess, kind of a dick, but trying to make him a hero didn't really work. But you're right, it had Kristana Loken in Terminator 3 and she was
Yeah.
good. She was
Yeah,
good in that
yeah,
role.
no, no,
She was
it's true.
good.
I love the twist at the end. I mean, I hate to, like, ruin it for people if anyone's actually gonna rent or go,
Yeah.
watch Terminator 3, but it had a let
For
me
the
just
one
say,
person in the chat who's like, "Look, tonight's the night.
tonight
After this show, after I watch Colonel Kurtz and Brett, I'm going to watch Terminator 3 tonight."
there's someone in the audience who probably will, and let me just say, if you watch it, it has even though there's some mediocre parts throughout, the last 10 minutes is, like, some of the best, like, cinema that I've ever seen. I'm serious, like, the last 10 minutes, they really brought it home, but I'm like, if the rest of the movie could have been
Yeah.
that good, but it ended on a powerful note. Um, so yeah, so I thought we'd talk about movies more in a little while.
Yeah, we can
We
talk
could
about
go
whatever.
back to we could go back to Nolan in a minute and talk about Tenet because there's a lot going on there. But I wanted to go over quickly what was in the news today or this week. So we kind of like last time you and I talked, it was 2 weeks ago, and that was when the Russell Brand stuff had just broken. Like literally, it was breaking while we were filming.
Mhm.
And so we talked a little about it, but not really from a position of knowledge or of other things. I'm still not in a position of knowledge, but of other
Yeah.
things having, come out and transpired. So I'm curious just to hear, where are you at on that? Do you have any kind of like firm feelings, or what do you think?
This week has been kind of quiet, right? Like this week was not nearly. Last week was a firestorm, and I think anyone that regardless of where you fall on his innocence or guilt, the amount of stuff that came out between big tech and government intervention in something there where they have no place right now at this juncture in the entire situation between Rumble being attacked, by the government, TikTok being informed, having the letter sent to them by the government, YouTube deciding to demonetize him, the investigations that have been opened after the fact, all that stuff. It's
A
very
lot.
hard. Like if you're trying to portray yourselves as not the bad guys, all of that stuff happening in the time span of like a couple of days is very hard for me to buy that there isn't some type of coordinated effort going on behind the scenes. Like I don't think any rational person can look at that and say, no, it's just a coincidence that all this stuff is happening at once. Not when there's so much about these networks. There's bad people involved at every level of production in Hollywood and the media. And I'm supposed to buy that this one guy that just happens to have a lot of cultural sway and political influence with his YouTube channel just happens to be the one that's getting the brunt of it. And that happened all kind of at the same time. What I thought was really interesting is at the same time he was being demonetized, Taylor Swift made a single tweet about getting people to go out and register to vote, and she got 35,000 people to register to vote in one day. And every single one of those people, as we know, I don't think it's a strong stretch to imagine that most of those people are going to vote the same way, right? They're all going to
Mhm.
vote down ballot Democrat because that's the audience she courts. So you take one very powerful, albeit not on the same level as her, but far more politically involved. You take one very powerful name off the ballot for cultural influence, and another one asserts herself. Do I believe that those are coordinated? No, but I think that they both bode very well for one side of the equation.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of like symptomatic of sort of a phenomenon that's happening like across sort of different spheres. And so like I get so uncomfortable with anything that sounds conspiratorial
Yeah.
except that what you find in these in these for lack of a better word, in these Me Too cases is that whether the accused are guilty or they're not guilty, there is now these days a lot of coordination that's going on behind the scenes before one of these stories pops out. And so I don't know, I'm not talking about some kind of like Illuminati secret society or
No.
anything like I think that's silly and like that's not what you're talking about either. But with the fact that it seems like you have politicians talking behind the scenes with people in these at these news outlets that release these stories,
Yeah.
that break these stories. I mean, we know that they talk to each other. And so and then these tech companies and
Yeah.
I mean all of this kind of happening at the same time. It is really creepy. It is odd.
It sounds conspiracy. Do you remember the story 4 or 5 years back where some reporter got caught on a hot mic saying that she had all of the dirt on Jeffrey Epstein and the network just wouldn't let her run it? That's not a conspiracy. It's not a big. It's not a big cabal, but it is true that somewhere, a story editor was told by someone higher up at their company, which is one of these couple of conglomerates that run all of these media companies, because we have consolidated so much of our brands, so much of our media down to just a few companies, that this is not a conspiracy. This is that somebody said, this is a story, we're not letting you run it. And that's not it's, they want you to think that just because, it's kind of like when they talk, and I'm not trying to make this a political show.
No,
It's
I
like
know
when
you're
they,
not. You don't have
it's
to.
like
It's
when
fine.
they say that Antifa isn't a group because they don't have a leader. That doesn't mean it's not a group, and that doesn't mean that there isn't coordination between chapters. There's merch stores for Antifa, right? So it's like they want to trick the lowest common denominator, the people who aren't paying close enough attention. It may be enough to fool them, and that's enough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry about that. I think that I didn't know that Antifa had a merch store. Sorry,
Yeah,
they
oh
do.
yeah, one chapter at one point, like I got into like back when I had a Facebook, I got into an argument with someone. He's like, "There's no leader, therefore it's not a group." And I like linked him to a merch store. I'm like, "What is this? Somebody has to run this. Somebody has to collect the money from this." Like there's coordination, there's different chapters in different cities
Well,
and stuff like that. The point is, it's not to trick you or I or the people who are, aware of what's going on in the world or who pay close enough attention. It's to trick the average person who's just passing by, and then they just take that information. They're like, well, oh, there's no like, why would somebody, like, why would the media come after Russell Brand? He's just a YouTuber. Well, he wields a lot of influence in the culture right now. 6 million people is a lot of people to reach on a, whenever you're posting a
he
video.
had a big audience. I did not realize until this happened because I was not a fan per se of Russell Brand, even though like I appreciated that he was speaking out on some things that I really agreed with him on, in
Yeah.
particular skepticism. I won't get into that whole thing right now, but
Yeah.
with the COVID stuff. But but I didn't watch his show or anything really, and so I didn't realize until this happened that he has an audience of millions of people,
Yep.
or did, or I guess still does.
Yep. And it wasn't just that. Don't just forget that. Like then sponsors for him on Rumble pulled out. Burger King, great loss there. And I'm here defending Burger King all the time against slander on my show, where everyone tells me Burger King is bad, and then they go in and they stab me in the back by pulling out of their advertising. It was them. It was Hello. It was like a bunch of advertisers pulled out of off of Rumble because they were in protest of this. And I'm like, look, you can go on YouTube, and there are YouTubers with, crimes that they've committed that are very public knowledge that people know about, that
Seriously.
nobody gets advertisements pulled off of for there. It is selective outrage at its finest.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, and I think that's where I would agree when Russell Brand was saying in his first video on this that he felt like it was coordinated. Like just what I've seen in other cases we could talk about later, but in cases that I cover where I think that there are people who are falsely accused. And I'm not saying that with Brand. I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. That's not the point. The point is that the coordination and the way in which they're attacking him is so over the top for something that hasn't been proven yet.
Yeah, and I see this in other cases where it's not some kind of like crazy like Illuminati thing. It's just people who are kind of like keeping tabs with each other. You know, like we everybody knows what side everybody is on. Come on, everybody knows like Cat 10 Barge is
Yeah.
also on the side of Rolling Stone for people who've been following the depth stuff. So like we know this. People talk. They kind of get us. Oh, we're about to break the story on Russell Brand,
Yeah.
and also I was contacted by someone who privately, so I can't post a
Yeah.
screenshot, but they told me that they were a part of this investigation into Russell Brand, and they told me that it involved law enforcement, that they talked to law enforcement, and they also talked to journalists. And so, I mean, there's things going on here at the same
Yeah.
time.
Do you remember there was a famous George Carlin skit where he's talking, it's not even a skit, he's talking to somebody about politics and they're talking about conspiracies. And he goes, there doesn't need to be a formal conspiracy to be a form of collusion behind the scenes of people. These people go to the same country clubs.
Right.
They've all part of the same fraternities. They went to the same colleges. You don't need to have a bunch of people around, in a dimly lit room around a semicircle table with a perpetually burning flame to be a conspiracy. That's not what that means. That term was created by the CIA to get you to stop thinking about things critically. And I hate to bring that point up, but it is true.
Yeah, I mean, you can mention the CIA. It's okay. And I mean, honestly, like you should talk about whatever you feel like saying. I think it's a good thing too for people to understand like we do have separate shows and
Yeah.
sort of separate trajectories that we're on. And I think in some ways you're more overtly, I guess you could say sort of political, but on the other hand, like I get really into some trouble with the Me Too stuff. And
Yeah.
so like we're at times we're going to say things that the other person's not necessarily on board with or the audience is. It's fine. But I'm curious I am more curious just to hear what you think. So do you think that we don't know what happened with Brand when you hear the allegations and you read the stories and stuff? What is your feeling about that? Do you have a feeling?
My cynicism is that we live in a world full of these corporations. Why do they actually care? People get away with egregious, heinous, disgusting crimes every day that they do nothing about. Why do they care unless there's a political
An
end to that for
agenda.
them, an agenda? Like if for these companies, whether it's to whitewash bad press for the government because they think that he's going to get people to look into things like COVID-19 or its connection to these pharmacies, whatever. The point is, the U.S. government, any government, and these for-profit companies, they don't do things out of the goodness of their heart. They don't. Like I would like to think that maybe at one time you could buy that, like, prosecutors in law enforcement did things because they wanted to get justice. But what reason does a media company have to do for it other than either ratings or to benefit people that have stock in their companies?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. Everybody has an agenda,
Yeah.
and you have to wonder with Russell Brand again, not some vast conspiracy, but just like why, if, especially if this was stuff from like a decade or more ago,
Yeah. Exactly.
and this man, like he's not apparently there is not any recent stuff that's being that's alleged or that's being investigated like in the last 10 years. The man is married, he has a kid. I know that doesn't absolve him of everything, but I'm just saying like what are we trying to get at here? And people will say, well, if he raped someone 15 years ago or whatever, he should still pay for it. Well, maybe, but then we get into some really thorny issues with like statute of limitations, just practically
Yeah.
speaking, like how long
Yeah.
should something hang over someone's head, particularly if there's no like there's no like forensic evidence of anything. I don't know.
Yeah. In the United States, at least here, innocent until proven guilty was a bastion of American values at one point, right? And
Hmm.
now they've realized that they don't need to convict you in a court of law to get what they want out of you. Not in an age where you live your life online and you can ruin someone's reputation. You look up his name now, and the first 7 to 8 pages you're going to find have nothing to do with his career as an actor, has nothing to do with the work he's done to, expose things going on in the between Pfizer and Moderna, all these companies. And again, I'm not a Russell Brand fan. I don't even really watch his stuff. I never did. I have an issue with the idea that for-profit companies that have dubious track records at best get to be bastions of moral superiority and then pretend to play the good guys when there's too much to be gained for them for me to buy that it's out of a sense of altruism. I don't buy it. Like, and again, if he's guilty, if that's what happened here, then go to prosecutors, assuming that it's a prosecutor that wants to find justice, and make your case and take him to court. Until then, I don't know what the government has, that why it's the government's business to tell tech companies to get involved with tech companies that are letting him make money on that platform. A lot of people point out, they're like, look, there are YouTubers who, like I always point out, Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson was convicted of rape in the past. He still has a YouTube channel. So is the idea
He
here
does.
is the idea here that you're only allowed to not make money before you've been convicted, and then, like, I guess after you served your time, then after you served your time, you've made good, you've paid your debt to society, right? Okay, fine. And then then this company gets to arbitrarily decide, well, we agree with your sentencing, therefore now we will give you your channel back. No, it's not even that simple. It's not even that complicated. It's selective enforcement. It's whoever we feel like punishing, and it's never going to be evenly distributed. And that's for a proven case. Like, are we also supposed to say, like, okay, so he's not, like, if he's convicted and he's in jail, maybe he can't make money while he's in jail, but R. Kelly is still monetized on YouTube, and his money's
R.
going to
Kelly is still monetized?
and his money is going to his victims. His money goes to his victims
Oh,
now
it
because he
does.
lost
Oh,
in-
okay. Oh,
because
yeah.
he
I'm like,
lost in
God.
court.
Okay.
But that's because he was prosecuted,
Right.
and it
Right.
was done in civil court, and they were able to then extract that money and pay his victims that way. Another interesting case, and I pointed this out on our show, there was a and I'm going to be very careful.
Wait, so are you saying that every time I watch an R. Kelly video on YouTube, I'm actually helping his victims?
You are paying his victims back. So you're right.
Oh, well, that makes me feel so much better, because honestly, like, one time, I Believe I Can Fly came on, and I really wanted to jam out to it, but then I was like, and so I changed it. But now I can just, like, I can listen to it like 24/7.
I am so jaded. I can watch a Kevin Spacey movie. I watch movies that legit, that they say, like, Harvey Weinstein produced this movie. I'm like, that's horrible, but I'm not going to not watch Scream because I love Scream. I'm sorry. I'm not doing that. Like, maybe it's just part of, like, my job, making it so that I'm very, like,
jaded have art.
To a lot of this.
There's like a slippery slope. There's such a slippery slope. And yes, there's some things that everybody agrees are horrible or whatever, and we're sure that they did it, I guess. But, like, once you start picking out people, like, then you're just gonna. I mean, it's a sad fact of life. People pick your top 10 artists. I don't care what field they're in, but your top 10 artists, and then you go and you read a serious, truthful, detailed biography of that person. You will want to cancel them, or at least today they would be canceled. I'm telling you, like, people are shitty.
And the sad fact is like, that's based on arbitrary moral standards, right? Everyone can get behind the fact that people who assault other people are awful. That's somebody who has, but they're like, look, like, we actually look at, like, rape as worse now than murder in most cases. Like, in a lot of ways, people are a lot more willing to forgive
the degree of sentence at times.
So, but what about people who are moral and religious? I have friends who will not watch TV shows with heavy swearing in it. What if it's somebody who's committed adultery? What if you're somebody who just doesn't want a movie because the person who starred in that movie cheated on their wife? There's going to be people who actually are completely okay with leaving an actor behind. It's arbitrary at best. Another example I'll give you. There was a band from the early 2000s called Lost Prophets. Now, I would not encourage anyone to go up and look, and I would not encourage anyone to go look up what the lead singer of this band was convicted of, but let it be known that you'll read it, you will feel disgusted.
It's the worst. It's like the worst thing you could imagine.
And that band's music is still monetized on YouTube.
What?
You can still go listen to Last Train Home.
He was convicted of that too.
Convicted, and that song is because it's on the because it's not like they own their music anyways. The label owns the music. So if you go and listen to that song on YouTube, still get ads beforehand.
That is so weird. Well, you're right. It is. It's very inconsistently applied. and it's generally such a slippery slope. I mean, that's a very clear case, which is crazy that it's still monetized then of someone like that, but it's very, I mean, like with Russell Brand, there was this immediate move then to try to penalize him in all of these different ways in terms of his revenue streams and the tech stuff. But there's no court of law. He's not even been charged. I was going to say convicted him. He's not even been charged. And there really is a hell of a lot wrong with the allegations. Most of the allegations, I watched the documentary, I listened to the women, I read the article in the Times. Not all, but the vast majority are just kind of like, he was an asshole. He used me for sex. He was too aggressive sexually. That sort of, I mean, it's fishy.
Netflix has 2 lawsuits that just got approved today. Should we demonetize Netflix because they're being sued for defamation? Where do we draw the line as to what crimes make you eligible to be demonetized and which crimes don't?
Right.
How many musicians are fighting copyright lawsuits in court? How many musicians have convictions for drinking and driving? Like, I'm actually asking this question, right? Like, where is it just sexual crimes?
Well,
Like,
you
if
mentioned the
that's
thing
the
about
point,
cheating on your wife. I was thinking about Sinatra and how, a long time ago or whatever, but Sinatra, his career bottomed out at one point before he had a comeback, and he basically lost his career when he was having an affair, cheating on his wife with Ava Gardner. And like back then in the mores from, back in time, my grandparents and earlier, that age, that was like even divorce had a horrible stigma. And so that sunk him for a while, and people will say, well, that's different than sexual assault, but understand that again, a number of the things, these are not proved. And a number of the things these guys are being accused of, in generally speaking, it's a lot of like bad boyfriend caddish, to use an old word, caddish behavior.
What about Elvis, who has had multiple documentaries come out where they now talk about how he's
teetering.
Groomed,
he's teetering.
They talk about how he groomed his future wife. They didn't have sex before they were married, but they got together, and they were together before when she was 14, right?
Mm-hmm.
By today's standards, that's grooming. Elvis music, I guarantee you, is still monetized on YouTube. Michael Jackson still monetized on YouTube. Whatever, I'm not going to get into it.
No, I know you're not saying he's guilty.
That's not the point. The point is that some people do think he's guilty. Some people don't. Who decides who's monetized and who isn't?
And so Olivia Clary married a child. Yeah, see, so a whole road that I get down I go down in some of my videos that we're not going to do here because it's too controversial, is the question of whether a teenager should be considered the same thing as a child. And I have a view, and it's controversial on that, and that doesn't mean that I think that young people, it's good or healthy for them to be having sex with people who are full-fledged adults. But I do think that they're historically and biologically, there's some gray area in there, and it doesn't typically stop at 18. Now, we can say now by our mores, we don't approve of that, but I'm just saying that to retroactively go back and look at Elvis, I'm not saying it was the norm to be dating mid-teenagers, but also like nobody had him. I was looking at a biography of Stevie Ray Vaughan the other day, and if people don't know who it is or don't care, no big deal. But Stevie Ray Vaughan, when he died, he was dating a 16-year-old model, and they were interviewing her on camera, and she said that, and she was seemingly very like healthy and together, I mean, psychologically and everything, and just a wonderful woman. And people were talking about how amazing she was, and that they had this amazing love story. And she helped pull him out of alcoholism, and she said it was the best thing in her life and all that. And I'm thinking, that's interesting,
I believe Jerry Seinfeld at one point was dating a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old? I think it was 17. Like, when he was in his 30s and stuff like that. Again, my point isn't to tell you it's good or bad. I would say that it's bad. I'm saying, why are these companies not applying these standards across the board? Because if you're going to tell me that
too much money, dude, he's bringing in too much.
Well, Michael Jackson, Elvis, too much money to bring in. So then the question is, Russell Brand probably brings in a lot of money, but the idea is, how much money does Elvis bring in versus how much his bad press hurts them or hurts the people that they're in the same clubs with, or the same
Right.
fraternities with. It's
Right.
a value assessment that they have to make, and I believe, at least it is of my personal opinion, that people who are influential said he is too valuable to things that we want to see. There's too much that he's saying that damages things that we consider valuable. So maybe that's not saying go forth and destroy his life, but what it says is, if you're working on this documentary, we're going to help signal boost it. We're in agreement there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I was just putting up here this, some people were kind of freaking out. They didn't know the Jerry Seinfeld thing. So this is the cover of People magazine. And I'm sorry, I'm terrible at enlarging things. I need to get better at this, but while we're on here, but what it says is it's a cover of People, and it says, "Look who's in love," and it's got these happy faces, and it says Jerry Seinfeld 39 and Shoshana Lonstein 18
Okay.
make 18 make an unlikely romance work. But I'm just saying, like, even today, this would be considered, like, he would like send his car to go pick her up at high school and stuff like that. And I'm saying, like, I'm not saying I think this is wrong, but I'm just saying it's interesting. People need to understand, people who are hardcore about this, and that's fine. I understand you've got a perspective if you're hardcore about the teenage thing, but you just need to understand, though, like, there is a kind of a lag time. Things are catching up, and to go back retrospectively and say someone's bad because he was doing something that people were celebrating as kind of like quirky and romantic not too long ago.
It says, however, there was one relationship that made everyone raise their eyebrows. It was with her, it says, who was allegedly 17 when she met the comedian Dane Cook.
Probably was, yeah.
Dane Cook just married a woman who's like, look up the Dane Cook story. He also just married a woman.
He's in his 50s and she's what? She's like 20.
But they met when she was underage. So I wonder if Dane Cook is demonetized on YouTube. I would doubt that.
Not.
So
yeah, I mean, these things.
Tell the corporations to get off their, like, I don't want to hear from anyone that there isn't at least something behind it other than goodwill from these corporations, because they're just out for truth, justice, in the American way. Nope. No.
Yeah, and I think that there really is something, again, this is not even about conspiracy, but there's something really, to me, insidious and disturbing about the way that the British government has swooped in. And I'm not saying ours is any better, but I'm just saying, in the wake of this Russell Brand thing, the way that the British government has swooped in, and particularly this Ministry of Culture, which it sounds so Orwellian, but whatever, this Ministry of Culture, and how they're sending out letters to Rumble saying, hey, hint, hint, are you sure you want to keep that Russell Brand guy on? Hint, hint, and stuff like that. Well, today there was an article I posted on my Twitter. I'll try to find it. But there was an article talking about how this Ministry of Culture in Great Britain, how they have announced a new initiative. It's going to be a new organization that is a partnership between the government and selected people in the entertainment industry in Great Britain. And it's going to be basically a kind of an oversight organization to police behavior that occurs on sets and during production of movies and of all kinds of entertainment. And they explicitly said that they hope that this is going to be the pattern for the international, like other governments' approaches to this, and the industry and in other countries, their approach to this, basically to stop bullying and harassment on set. And those terms, as we know, are very malleable. It's a slippery slope. And basically, to me, it's like, oh my God, we're going to sterilize the arts now and get these bureaucrats micromanaging it. Like, what kind of hell is that going to be?
Not to mention, it will be weaponized by people who don't like someone. And
Yes.
if you don't think that somebody who is very well versed in office politics and has very little conscience, and let's face it, people who go into entertainment are known to be cutthroat. They want to get ahead. They want to do whatever they have. Maybe back in the day, that meant you had to knock on Harvey Weinstein's door if you wanted to get what you wanted. Now that's not what you do. Now you tell somebody else that somebody treated you badly, or somebody looked at you the wrong way.
I felt harassed on set.
Yeah.
Not to mention bullying climate. Yeah.
Not to mention it's the UK and they don't have any freedom of speech anyways.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the situation, although, I mean, I feel like the United States is gaining on them, so
Yeah.
we're not far behind.
I'm over the idea that the like if you want to tell me that he's guilty, fine. He could be guilty. I have no idea. But the idea that I'm supposed to carry water for these companies which have been, bad for years. There have been scandals at media companies, there have been scandals in government for as long as they've existed. I don't want to hear about how they're out here trying to protect the people. I just don't want to hear it.
Yeah, no, I don't either. And when Russell Brand, he came back on what a couple of days ago, back on the air, online, so to speak. And he gave and he just kind of gave this quick statement about what's been going on lately, but basically just kind of moved off it into
Yeah.
then discussing his normal stuff. And there were some people who said that they felt like that was really not a strong way to respond, and that he really, it seemed like he was trying to evade it or whatever. But honestly, there's a part of me now that thinks that trying to defend yourself, maybe it is just
It won't work.
it's so futile now that maybe people just, I mean, maybe it's the opposite of what I've been thinking. Maybe people just ignore it and they say fuck it and they go on, like,
Yeah.
go on about their lives.
There's a reason Chris Brown is still selling out arenas. There's a reason Chris Brown is still as famous as he was. He didn't apologize. He just moved on with his career. He didn't address. He didn't make a big
Chris
deal out of it.
Brown was like,
Yeah,
I'm
he
moving
didn't.
on.
He didn't give a crap. Granted, I guess like after the fact, Rihanna came out and like they buried the hatchet, whatever. And a lot of people, they've got their own opinions on that. But in the public eye, it would have looked very bad. Nobody, like the ones who just choose to not apologize, and that's the sad part, is like it's the climate we live in isn't a recipe for sincerity, because when you apologize, it's never enough anyways. It
No,
doesn't absolve you.
that is
If
that is
anything,
definitely true.
all it is seen as is an admission of guilt. That's all it's seen as. It's never enough. I would love to know the time where somebody's like, you know what? The mob has come for me. I am come here to say that I am deeply, deeply sorry. And then the mob collectively said, we forgive you. And then nothing ever came of it again. No, that's not the way that
Right.
works. You are now tied to that forever. And if you step one toe out of line again, the next article written about you is so-and-so who was accused of this and later apologized for his behavior. It just becomes the proof they need to further to further dunk on you.
The story just perpetuates the
Yeah.
story. No, it's, I mean, yeah, it really does. It really does seem that way. And so
You're
I don't.
better off just not like you're not, like it's kind of the same thing where it's like when people have critiques of you as like a creator, right? And if you sit there and obsessively read all the
Yeah.
comments or messages, you can't respond to that much intake. And I really do believe that we as human beings, I was mentioning this on the show earlier, we weren't designed for social media. We were not designed to have 1,000 opinions of us hurled at us all day, every day. And that's before the age of social media. And like, that's not including the people who are then accused of something, haven't gone to court yet, haven't been given a chance to defend themselves in a
Right.
court of law. You're not designed to respond to 1,000 people at once, because you're never going to make everyone happy anyways.
Yeah.
He's
No.
better off staying quiet and allowing himself to hire the best lawyers he can, fight it in court, do whatever you can, because the people that support you are already going to support you. The people that have decided you're guilty are going to continue to decide that you're guilty. I really do believe that as a culture, we really are past this, or in this age where you make up your, and we talked about this that one time, we said like, you're supposed to just hitch your wagon to one horse at the beginning and say he's guilty, he's innocent, and then that's the view you're supposed to take the rest of the way. I think most people now, they decide whether someone is innocent or guilty right away, and very few people, because most people aren't as engaged in these things past just watching it when it comes on once in a while, they make their judgment. You're not going to change a lot of people's minds on these things. You're better off just not talking about it.
Yeah. I mean, and that may be the problem, is that these guys, and it's generally men, they suffer such extreme financial and
Yep.
career consequences that it doesn't seem like being quiet does anything either. Like, I feel like there should be some kind of there's like a third way. There's like the way that like Yoda could locate some way to
You get
get through
ghettoized.
this.
What it is you make it part of your brand. I'm the canceled actor, I'm the canceled singer, I'm the canceled this or that, and then you have to do then you're on conservative outlets for the next 20 years, and you're working on Daily Wire movies. That's what it is. It's and that's I'm not trying to
I
be.
know you're not.
It's
I
a
know you're
joke.
not.
But the point is that you like, if you make it part of your brand, that's you forever now. You're now the counterculture canceled
Well, I
comedian.
mean, kind of like what they're trying to do to Russell Brand. Like Russell Brand, I'm sorry, Russell Brand, just from the little that I know about him, he is a deeply complex, complicated, nuanced, non-ghettoized, if we're going to use that term. He is not a non-compartmentalized thinker, and now he is, because of this, people are lumping him in as like, oh, he's this right-wing conspiracy theorist, and I'm just thinking, my God,
It's what they wanted all along. They want to be able to cast you off as something, because most people don't want to take in media from the side that they don't agree with, right? So what it is now, they have effectively cut off his ability to reach new people. Now he's only going to be preaching to the choir. He's only going to be preaching to the people who would already be willing to hear him out, rather than bring in new voices, bring in new minds who might actually have their opinions open up to them, because they're gonna watch a video, they're gonna Google him, and they're gonna see this stuff if they haven't already. And before they can start looking into the latest scandal involving Moderna or the government, they're gonna be like, do I really want to go
Yeah.
researching this on the words of a predator?
Right,
I don't
right,
know. Like,
right.
it's just it's the media is evil, ladies and gentlemen. No matter how much you hate journalists, you do
man.
not hate them enough.
We've created a madhouse. Okay, I'm going to read this super chat. Shane H. Wilder, thank you for that. He says, I want to say that you two are my new favorite thing about Friday nights. Oh, yay.
Yes.
Y'all, thank you. That's a big compliment. Y'all are keeping me entertained while I write a spec script. So y'all are helping me while I work to try and get a new job. Are you writing the next installment of Avatar?
That would be great. It'll have to be 6.5 hours long. We'll just double the length of
with
every
lots
movie.
of scenes of whales flipping over or
Yes,
whatever.
lots.
I was just there was one sequence where we had to see the whale flip over, like I feel like it was like 10 times, and I'm just like, God.
Well,
I'll be happy when he gets back to Terminator movies.
If you go see the new Expendables movie, you'll understand why good CGI is a good thing, because holy crap, is it bad in that movie. It's so bad. Awful.
Yeah, I have not seen any of those movies. Maybe I saw the first one.
I love those first two Expendables movies. They're Expendables 2 is essentially the Avengers of 80s and 90s action stars, and if that's not the coolest thing on planet Earth, I don't know what is.
I see here a comment. There was something that I was going to say about Rihanna and Chris Brown, and I was like, "Uh-oh, should I say this or not?" But let me just say that with Rihanna, like the way that those pictures and the way that Chris Brown beat the shit out of her, like there's just no excuse for that, and he needed to have had consequences for that. However, there is a part that they leave out, and I think you do know what I'm talking about, that she actually attacked him first.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think that means that you can be like, hey, okay, bitch, and I'm going to beat the shit out of you. But like, they almost got in a wreck because she was like biting him and slapping him right in the car. They were fighting over his phone and if he had been texting some girl or whatever. And she just like freaks the fuck out. And like, he's trying to drive or something, right? And she's going at him.
There's a really poignant Bill Burr skit where he talks about that, he goes, look, in your heart of hearts, do you think that they were just like driving down the road and she's like, oh, look, do you want to go get some ice cream? And he just like starts hitting the crate. No. Or do you think that they were having some epic end of the relationship, knockdown, drag out fight, and some crazy stuff got said, and things happen, right? And it doesn't absolve him of what he did. He should have never done what he did. But the point is that like, I go back to my same point. He's still monetized on the internet. Like most of these people, these awful people, you could even go further. I would like you to find me like how many movies are there out there where there probably isn't somebody just a tad problematic at some level of a production process, from your producers, your directors, your actors. Like you're telling me there's nobody problematic in any of those things that are monetized? I don't buy it.
Dude, just I mean, I wasn't kidding. Just write down a list. Don't even look anybody up. Just say, "Who are my 10 favorite actors?" Particularly, like, classical from the past. Because I mean, nowadays, we kinda know more of their dirty laundry and stuff, but, like, your 10 favorite actors. Like, Sean Connery beat the shit out of women,
Yep.
and he even admitted to hitting women in that famous interview with Barbara Walters.
Yep.
He didn't admit to beating the shit out of them, but he did admit to hitting them and said he thought there was nothing wrong with it in certain contexts. But, like, I've read, like, memoirs of his ex-wives and stuff like that. And I know they can lie about stuff too, but, like, this wasn't them suing him or trying to get money. It's just what they put in their books, and they said he beat the shit out of them.
Unless you're
And I'm not
willing to
that's
admit,
horrible.
unless people are willing to admit that when this stuff happens, it's selective enforcement. I just don't think that the discussion is actually off to a very genuine start. I think once you admit, you say, look, okay, now let's decide, is there an agenda from the people making these accusations against him? Sure. Okay, once we can agree with that, now we can get into the discussion of whether he's guilty or not. But
Yeah.
it's like they made those accusations. I'm like, wow, those are very serious. And then just every day, some new thing happened in which he was being targeted by the media. And I'm like, am I supposed to believe that this isn't in some way coordinated? It's just, you're not
Right.
doing a very good job of portraying yourselves as the good guys here.
No, no, and like I said, I'm very concerned, very freaked out about some of this government stuff because here's my ultimate fear. I don't think that I mean, it's a possibility we could turn into some kind of super authoritarian, like dystopic Orwellian nightmare, but that's not really my fear. My fear is that the spontaneity of life and the freedom of life and our ability in relationships to kind of play at the edges, at the margins sometimes, particularly in creative fields,
Yeah.
that it's going to become so bureaucratized and sterile and mechanized and just insipid.
Yeah.
I don't think people know that the more safety, I've said this so many times, but the more safety you have, the less freedom. And so there's got to be trade-offs. And I feel like we've just kind of lost it now with this desire for perfect safety all the
Yeah.
time.
I think part of it is also that what the push will be is, like, we have whittled down these corporations to, like, a couple of conglomerates that own everything, right? And YouTube was one of the last bastions where, yes, it was owned by Google, but back in the heyday of the internet, you could be spicy on YouTube, and before the first adpocalypse, stuff like that. Creative fields are going to have to branch out, and it was one of my complaints with the writer's strike. I love how they're all like, these corporations are evil, but they're like begging to work for the corporations. They're like, we think it's evil that you have all this money, so you should give us your money. That way you'll be less evil. No, if your actual complaint with these companies was corporate greed, you would go off and make your own thing. But the problem is they don't want to do that because they don't want to actually assume the risk of
Well, it's
actually
risky.
funding their own
Yeah.
projects.
Yeah, it's
So as
hard.
long as these companies are the ones who hold the keys to the castle, as it were, you're going to have to play ball with them, and it's going to get increasingly more safe. It's going to be increasingly homogenized. There was just an interview this week in which Michael Caine, who's like 900 years old now, he's not, he's 90, but he says, I never understood the point of an intimacy coordinator on set. Now, you could say, yes, an intimacy coordinator's job, which, by the way, I would love to know if there's any male intimacy coordinators out there. My guess is no, but I'm just
I
saying.
think there's some gay ones. I think that's about it. That was the joke in one of the episodes of The Idol, is they're making fun of the intimacy coordinator, and
Yeah.
he kind of played him as this very hyper woke. I don't know if he was exactly gay, but his mannerisms though were like very sort of this woke stereotype, like, I'm here to make sure that everything is safe, and
Yeah.
this sort of thing.
His job, outside of, they say, like, they help set the scene, they help coordinate the movements. I'm like, if this wasn't an HR move, a director could still do that. A director would still be perfectly capable of
Mhm,
helping you to coordinate that scene. Their job is HR. In
mhm,
its
mhm.
at its base level, their job is to say, well, he groped her, but we had an intimacy coordinator on set. We did
Right,
our due
right,
diligence. The
right.
WWE has a thing now where so the WWE, which anybody who loves wrestling or grew up loving wrestling like I did, understood that the best thing about wrestling in the 80s is that they were all coked out of their minds, and it was awesome.
Yeah, they
All right.
were.
It was
Like the
awesome.
Von
Okay.
Erich, the Von Erich
Yes.
twins,
There's a
right?
movie.
Yeah, yeah,
There's a
yeah.
movie about the Von Erichs coming out, starring Zac Efron.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I've always thought they were so interesting. I didn't give a shit about wrestling, but I thought
Yeah.
their story was really interesting. Yeah.
So the WWF was just drugs and problems back then. Well, now the WWE has a policy where anyone that has ever worked for WWE ever is able to go to rehab on their dime free of cost. They're not doing that because they love these people. They're doing that because it's good for their public image. It's just common sense, right? You could say that, like, and that's kind of the beauty of capitalism, right? It's like, look, you're doing a net positive, but it's for selfish reasons. In this case, you're offering something to someone because you offer a product of value, and in the past you weren't so good. Now you're trying to make good, not because you're actually a better company, but because you're publicly traded now. You need to look good for investors, so you add value. And they obviously they're much more strict on drug testing now and stuff like that. But that's the point, right? None of these corporations have intimacy coordinators because they actually believe in the validity of it. They're doing it because they want to prevent themselves from getting sued.
Cover their ass. Yeah. Well, and that's the other element of a lot of what's going on, that and maybe more so in the United States than Europe. Maybe it's not as easy to sue people for money civilly in Europe, but that's a lot of what's going on with a lot of this stuff in the United States too, is that people
Manson.
just want, yeah, they want easy money. And the Manson thing, I've obviously looked into it, I'm sure a lot more than you, and so I don't expect you to have an opinion on that per se, but I think that what most people would agree that people are heavily incentivized when they go after someone, one of these rock stars, movie stars, what have you, in court, in civil court, and they want money and they're going after money. Like, they are heavily incentivized to do that. Like I'm surprised, as greedy as most people are, or just as much as, or just a lot of people need or want money, I'm surprised people aren't getting sued more. Like, I would think that celebrities would just constantly be awash in frivolous lawsuits, crazy people, what have you.
I dream of the day I slip and fall in the right driveway. Someday I will. Look, I used to live in Minnesota. It was cold and icy there, and every day you just walk by that, you're in the Target parking lot and you're like, but what if I was to just slip and fall right here, and just, that would be great. That would be fantastic.
My dream is to have what happened to the Covington kids happen to me, because those kids literally just stood there and they got, like, what? They ended up getting like hundreds of millions in a settlement. Didn't
The
the
one
main
kid
one
did,
got like
yeah.
150 million
Yeah.
from from news
Yeah.
outlets? Dude, that would be my dream, is to somehow be at the right place at the right time, where the
Yeah.
media completely defame me, and and then I'm able to actually sue them. I mean, that was an example of someone who sued. People tell me, "Oh, well, it's so hard to sue in the United States. That's why people don't sue." Well, that Covington kid, he fucking sued, and he got like over $100 million. Wow.
There's a little bit of, like, for him though, it's because it became such a media spectacle that the best lawyers were going to be willing to take it because of the high profile nature of the case.
It did become a spectacle. It certainly did. And
That's
and to
crazy.
people who weren't maybe paying attention, they don't know what I'm talking about, you can look it up, but, like, it is interesting. And it's also interesting how the selective editing of footage, of video, really makes such a huge difference, because if you looked at just what the media were promoting in those first days, it made the kid look like he was harassing the Native American guy and he was the asshole. And then when you look at the longer footage, you see what all was going on. That the kid was just standing there and was just kind of like, didn't know what to do, and this guy's banging these drums in his face and yelling at him.
Looked really bemused and, like, weirded out at first, and then, like, thought he was, like, being nice. Like, it was look, when I say, like I said earlier, no matter how much you hate the media, you don't hate the media enough. That's a perfect example of it. Like, the number one thing you should look at anytime that you watch something that they're showing you a clip, be wary of where the clip starts. Be wary of where the clip ends, and be wary of cuts in the middle. Now, in a perfect world where the media was actually doing their job, you, the viewer, the ones they're supposed to have in mind when they're doing these things. I thought they were out to save us from people like Russell Brand. Like if they were doing their job and they were actually out to tell you the truth rather than to tell you a narrative, there wouldn't be cuts in the middle. Or if there was, there would be a notification as to why they cut to a certain place, things like that. And it's kind of like how they do the same thing with protest footage. So what happens is a bunch of people throw stuff at cops. They hit them with objects, and then when the cops retaliate, they start recording. And you only see the cops retaliating, and vice versa. There's an amazing Ryan Long skit. You should look it up, where he talks about how he's a video editor and he sells his footage to both Fox and CNN. And the idea is like, look, here's some footage of a bunch of protesters peacefully protesting, hitting cops with Molotov cocktails. I sell that to CNN. Here's the Fox. And then he goes, here's the cops turning off their body cameras and beating the shit out of the protesters. I sell that to Fox. Like that's the point. Like it's pick your news network and don't for a second
it's kind of like
right is any better. It's not. It's not.
It's kind of like that movie. Have you seen that movie Nightcrawler, the Jake Gyllenhaal movie?
I have not.
You should see that, especially since you like movies so much. But that's like the basic premise, is that he's this guy who just goes around LA shooting this, like he listens to the police scanner or whatever, and then he gets there. He gets to the crime scenes before the cops do, and so he just gets all this footage, and then he just sells it to whoever will pay the most. But I feel like that's like it's a great sort of allegory for like the larger media, which is that's what they do. And I just want to say something about Russell Brand, and then we'll take a little break and come back at 5. But I also, my big problem, I've talked about this, my big problem with the Russell Brand allegations is that maybe not all of them, but so many of them, these women are acting as if he was like flying under the radar and he's stealthy, and then he had sex with me and he didn't call me, or it just seemed, or I was only 16 and I didn't, I wasn't ready to be in a sexual relationship. Well, then what were you doing going over to Russell Brand's house? And there's a picture, because I mean, this guy, look, it's not like we're talking about like someone's high school teacher or their coach or something where they have like this responsible mentor position and they groom the person or they get them close and they kind of fly under the radar. I mean, I don't care what teenage age you are, if you cannot see Russell Brand, I'm going to stop repeating the pun coming a mile away, because it's just too good. But if you cannot see him coming a mile away, then you must just be totally cognitively deficient, because the guy was constantly, as his persona, he was constantly advertising it. Like
That one's hard, because what, like the mom seemed to do everything right? She took her phone away. She told her not to do it and stuff like that. Like I feel for that. Like, look, people make mistakes when they're younger, and that's awful. And what she went through, assuming that what she's saying is true, like, like it shouldn't have happened. And like, again, I don't know whether that happened or not, or to what extent, but it's rough. Did you ever notice how whenever a male teacher like has sex with a female student, it's rape. But whenever a female teacher has sex with a male student, it's had a sexual relationship with. Have you ever noticed that?
It doesn't have the same punch to it, so to speak. It doesn't.
No, there was a couple of, like, I see those stories, and that's another example of selective enforcement from the media. They very rarely, if ever, report on those situations. And they're fairly common. Those stories of female teachers who sleep with male students, and that's whatever your opinion on those things. It's a person in a position of power. My problem is that the media will not show that. They will not share that story with the same vigor that they would be happy to show the story of a male teacher doing it, because it doesn't fit the narrative they want to push there. So I don't want to hear about how they're unbiased or they're just out for the truth. If they were out for the truth, it would be a clear picture. It would not be one obfuscated by what the gender is of the person who committed the crime or all the other things they take into account.
No, those are all good points. Tugga Simp was pointing out that her mom actually drove her to his house several times.
Oh,
well, the thing is that the 16-year-old, this is the thing though, like this is a good example, Brett, though, of how all of these allegations start to run together. And so like it's hard for me to keep straight like who's accusing whom of what, because like a lot of them are just like with the 16-year-old, her basic complaint, as I remember, it was not that there was anything non-consensual, but just that she looks back and she realizes she was too young and stuff. And again, like and even with some of the Manson allegations, you know, one of his early accusers, she ended up kind of drifting by the wayside and going away and becoming silent, I think because she was so embarrassed by some conflicting evidence that came out about her. But she claimed in her Instagram statement that she posted when she came forward on Manson, she claimed that when she first started dating him, she felt like that he would be a source of great love and safety and security in her life. Now I'm looking at the picture of this man right here on the right. That's Russell Brand holding the thong on the left. But like Manson here on the right, and I understand it's just a persona, but like you look at this lady and this seems like it would be like a super safe, secure type of relationship to you. Like I just don't believe that people are this stupid. I just feel like there's some history that's being rewritten with some of these women. They knew what they were doing. They were attracted to it. Let's just be honest, most of them. That's why they were wanting to fuck these guys.
Yeah.
And let's just not pretend. I'm not absolving these guys of some caddish behavior or inappropriate, or maybe in Russell Brand's case, I don't know, maybe some even illegal behavior. I don't know. But like there is a whole hell of a lot that these accusers are not taking responsibility for. And then, of course, in cases like Manson, I think it's outright hoax, but we'll see what happens.
Yep. It's scary to see all this stuff happen, but this is always going to be the product of a world that's as digitally connected as we are now. There's just it's fodder for entertainment. It's fodder for these stories. It's scary. All of these stories are very scary.
They absolutely are. So someone, is it Beast? How do you say your name? Sorry, I just butchered it. But anyway, you said, are you following the Lawrence Fox, Ava Evans thing? So I actually love Lawrence Fox, and I just sort of know about this. So let's go away for like 5 minutes or so. I want to take a break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it. And I'll try to dig up the footage, I guess. Of
Yeah, you can the his actual rant is
yeah.
is
Okay,
online.
I'll find it while we go. We'll be back, people, in 5 minutes or so. Bye bye. I'm gonna remove you, Brett. There we go.
Ready?
Right here.
3, 2, 1.
Lawrence just touched.
Okay, I think I found it.
You find it?
It's so hard. I hate how it's so hard to find shit because when I went to YouTube and I typed in Lawrence Fox
Twitter, you got to find it on
comments,
Twitter.
then you get
these
all
days.
this stuff of like it's just news reporting on it stuff. Anyway, I found it on the Daily Mail. I think it's right. So let's look at it here.
Mary finds everything. Like when
That is
Mary's out,
priceless somehow.
when Mary is out of town, there are no visual aids. It's just a discussion. When Mary is there, it's just here's a picture, here's a video, here's an audio clip. I'm like, oh my god! Like I have like a heart attack from all the tabs open.
No, I don't like doing it. I don't like finding stuff. I tell you what was great training though. So I taught college for many, many years. I taught college for like 15 years. I know some people think I don't look that old, but I did. I taught college for 15 years, and so I taught film a lot, and so there was a lot of like talking, but also like getting clips up. And I used to hate it, hate it. But now I'm like, well, thank God, because all of those years it was just training for basically running a bigger college class. Okay, I think I found it. Let me put it up here, and we'll just look at this. It's not the full segment, but it's the clip. I think. Just a second. Oh, come on. Okay. Cash back. Okay.
Stain there.
Man, what wave of feminism are we on?
Oh shit.
Is it fourth, fifth? You are watershed, so I can say this. Show me a single self-respecting man that would like to climb into bed with that woman ever. Who wasn't an incel. Little incel. That little woman has been fed, spoon-fed oppression day after day after day after day, starting with the lie of the gender wage gap. And she sat there, and I'm going like, if I met you in a bar and that was like sentence 3, chances of me just walking away are just huge. We need powerful, strong, amazing women who make great points for themselves. We don't need feminist 4.0. They're pathetic and embarrassing. Who'd want that?
Uh-oh.
Look,
Dan, it's amusing to see. I have to say, I do appreciate Lawrence Fox for making Dan Wooten squirm, because a lot of us really hate him for back in the Johnny Depp days.
Dan Wooten then later apologized, gave like a groveling apology for like, I didn't find it funny, and then they released their like, he actually sent like text to Lawrence Fox in which he responded with laughing emojis, thus proving that he did find it funny, which just makes him very two-faced. And look, I didn't actually find like, I found the jokes to be kind of cheesy.
I thought it was okay, honestly. People know he's fooling around. He's just being like, I mean, we do this too. I talked about this like a while back about how it's very hard to do an interesting show or to be an interesting commentator without crossing the line, because the things, look, let's just be honest. 90% of the stuff that people find funny or interesting is something that is transgressive in some way. It's transgressive in some way. Now, it may not be all out, offensive, but it is transgressive. And so when you're kind of like riding those waves and you're amped up, people don't realize like how much like adrenaline, even like right now, what we're doing, how much adrenaline you have, and stuff's just coming out of your mouth.
when the show's done, like it's the same thing. Like when we finish our show, because we're live 5 days a week, or we finish this, I'm always like weirdly exhausted and overly energized at the same time.
No, it's true. It's true.
So
now,
so
the woman who was he
Yeah.
responding to? Because someone said she's a nightmare. What's he talking about? Who's the woman that he was calling out?
So okay, she has a. You should look up her Twitter account. She's mad that she didn't get an apology from him, as if you're owed an apology from anyone. But
Mhm.
it's crazy. He got suspended from the network for that.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, that is I think that
Yeah,
is crazy. That is crazy, particularly because what he was saying, everybody understands it's in jest, and it wasn't even like he was making a broadly
or
anti-woman statement. He was saying we need more like, we need better women, more
yeah,
intelligent women, and, there it is okay to say that you don't wanna fuck someone. Like, is
yes.
that really that offensive to say, like, this I could say that, "This guy
Yeah.
annoys the hell out of me, I don't wanna come near him," or what I mean, people say things like that.
See, the key is to be self-deprecating. That way, they can't get mad at you if you're self-deprecating towards yourself. But we covered this like during the week. We covered that whole story about them,
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
and yeah, he got suspended from that. And Dan Wooten like groveled before them and was like, "I'm so sorry for laughing." I didn't actually when I saw Dan Wooten, like I kind of took the position you did. I didn't think he was laughing. I thought he looked awkward and was
Yeah, I
like,
thought he did too. He didn't know what to
like
do with it, I don't
yeah,
think.
like I didn't think he thought it was funny. I mean, I might think that he thinks it's funny off camera, but I think that I think that his self-preservation instincts were kicking in,
No,
and
people
he's
need to
like, I don't want to be
understand
attached.
too, like, I don't and look, I don't wanna defend Dan Wooten because I think that what he did to Johnny Depp was terrible, but let me just say that we have all of us who have done YouTube and who have had guests on, we've all had the experience of someone kinda going off the rails a little bit, and you don't want to it ruins the show if you get all serious and you chastise that person, like, "Come on
Mhm.
now, calm down." Like, I will do that occasionally if people get way over the line, I'm just like, but, like, generally what you do is you just kinda have this sick smile on your face, and you sort of chuckle, and you pray that it's gonna end soon.
Yeah. Like that's the beauty of like the beauty of our show is that I'm very much I'm the least controversial person you're ever gonna.
Well, that is
I am not controversial at all. I'm like, yeah, maybe they're guilty, maybe they're innocent. Yeah, maybe he did it. Maybe like I'm actually I'm actual fence sitter. I'm like, yeah, maybe. Like I don't have I'm team no strong opinions. That's other than the media is evil and the government is corrupt. I'm pretty much team no strong opinions on just about everything. Because a lot of times the fact of the matter is when we cover stories like this, we're not going to know, right? Like we're not going to know the extent of all of these stories that involve Me Too because we weren't there. So we're never going to know.
it's like a bottomless pit trying to get to the it reminds me of that scene in one of my favorite movies, JFK, when Joe Pesci's just going off and he's like, "It's an enigma wrapped in a riddle. You can't get your mind around it. You can't get your mind around it." And I do kind of feel like that sometimes with these cases, like even in cases where I feel like they're falsely accused, it's still like getting to the bottom of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard's relationship. I'm not talking about culpability or whatever. I think she was horrible. I think she was the problem. But still getting to the bottom of that, like I'm sure that their marriage therapist who sat there for hours, for days upon days, I'm sure Johnny Depp still can't get to the bottom of it.
Yeah. How do you feel? This is a question I was talking with someone about earlier. Do you feel like we have, in a way, like evangelized therapy in this country? Like this country thinks like very highly of therapy now. Like it's become something like Mary says that it's because instead of going to confessional, people are going to therapy.
That sounds like something Mary would say.
Yeah, right. But it's like, like it's a lot of people, like it just seems like one of these things where people talk all the time about therapy. So because I read celebrity news all the time.
Mhm.
They're always talking about going to therapy. I'm like, yet nobody's getting better. It's a racket.
Well, I'm of two minds about that.
Mm.
As someone who really loves reading, even like old esoteric stuff like Freud and Lacan and things like that. At the same time, I have known a lot of people who go in. It's like masturbatory. They go in every week.
Exactly.
They
Yeah.
talk, and it's like, is it making it better? Is it making it worse? In
Because
fact,
they don't have a priest to talk to, Mary would say. Or we're just
maybe.
or are we a lonely culture that
I
we
think
just
we're
don't
fucked
have
up. I think
we're
we're pretty
fucked up and
up.
we're
Yeah.
lonely and we don't have like who was it who was it earlier that was talking about like a very high percentage of millennials and Gen Z don't have a best friend they feel like they could call if something went wrong in their life. And it's like
Yeah.
if you don't have people that you can confide in, then I guess you got to pay someone to go confide in them.
I do think to a degree that Mary is getting at something in the sense that I do think we have spiritual natures. Now you can be an atheist and think that that's just some kind of maladaptation or something,
Yeah.
but like I do think we have spiritual natures, and I think that for most of human history, that was very centered on some kind of religious or spiritual practice, and now it needs somewhere to go. And because we're in so much more of a secular society,
Yeah.
I mean, even religious people are more secular than, unless we're talking about real extremists. I think that that does need to go somewhere. And so, and the other thing too with therapy, you said we're lonely. I do think there's a lot of therapy is just people going in and just wanting someone to talk to. And we don't
Yeah.
have communities anymore. We don't have large extended families generally that live together, people taking care of other people's children, and I mean, it's
Yeah.
just, it's very different than how we evolved to be.
When I got out of rehab a long time
Speaking of
ago.
communities.
Speaking of communities, right? I was actually telling this this story earlier about how like when I smell coffee, it reminds me of rehab because I don't drink coffee. So everybody in rehab drinks coffee, and I was
Sure,
I
I
was like
bet.
downstairs, but like when I got out of rehab back in 2013, I then went to further like I had to go to DBT training, dialectic behavioral therapy, and cognitive behavioral therapy programs that had, workbooks that you had
Mhm.
to work through and all this stuff. And even then, when I was talking to the lady who I was seeing there, she said that one of the hardest parts was that about her job was like, because I would ask her questions about her job if I could before the session. She's like, it's like helping people convince them that they're ready for life without it.
Mhm, mhm,
Right? That's a
mhm.
very hard thing, especially in a culture where we are consistently talking about how messed up things are. We're consistently, I believe that we are getting more nihilistic, and I believe the internet has a lot to do with that, the way information is disseminated.
Mhm.
And like I said, you don't have the same friend groups that you had before. You don't have the same communities that you had before.
The
Families
same
like we're
connection to
yeah,
nature, we're completely, I mean, we're the what we're hooked into right now, like, we sort of sense the madness of it, the insanity of what we're actually doing right now, but we
yeah,
can't really because we're used to it. But what we're doing right now is actually insane. I'm not saying insane like we're crazy to be talking on the computer, but I'm
yeah.
saying, like, when we think about our evolutionarily developed biological processes, they're not evolved to deal with whatever this matrix is that we're
Oh,
inside right now.
I believe more than anything. I see the phone, like when people talk about like when did the world go crazy? I think it was when your phone got put like okay, so in 2012, the United States government made it legal to propagandize American citizens. Right around the same time, the iPhones became cost effective, and you now had like an iPhone 3G or an iPhone 4 in your pocket where you could now get information at your fingertips all the time. And that has only gotten easier as time has gone on, right? So you are constantly inundated with input. You're constantly inundated with information, and you're constantly inundated with the opinions of other people now when you share them on social media. And we as human beings we weren't even designed in most cases to deal with strong conflict to our choices. So think about like when you go to work, right? You have a job, assuming that you're not like so bad at your job that you're getting yelled at every day. You get a performance review, what, semi-annually, every 3 to 6 months, if at the most every 3 months would be like 4 times a year, maybe, if you're working a real professional job and they keep tabs on you. But it's not like people have strong conflict with everybody every day.
Mhm,
You're
mhm,
not
mhm.
having people share their most hard-nosed offensive takes about what you do as living.
Yeah.
Maybe when maybe like road rage would be a good example
And
about
even that's not
the
happening all the time
yeah.
generally, yeah.
But you and I, the human beings, were not designed to constantly be inundated with especially people you don't know who have no connection to you. When you get criticized by someone who knows you, there is a certain base level of connection between you that
Mhm.
allows that critique to happen, even in the harshest of contexts where it upsets you. There is a base level of connection just by being in the same room and having shared history together. No wonder we're desensitized when you're having these when you're being constantly told that you're stupid or that you're evil or that you're like from people that you don't know, and people can pretend like it doesn't bother them. Yes, maybe there's a certain part of the population who they can absolutely, like, once you get to a certain level of fame, you zone out because you're like, look, I get so much correspondence every day. I just tune it all out. But that requires, and they wonder why so many people who get into certain
even Elon Musk is still
Yeah.
responding to some of those comments on his
Yeah.
Twitter. Sometimes I'll see where Elon Musk has responded, and maybe he has people scouring his Twitter for him
Yeah.
and like reporting to him, but like he still will get in the weeds on shit. And I'm like, damn, even Elon Musk is like, you know, people like this are still digging in with the comments.
And the thing is like, you have to have a very healthy ego to be able to take that. You do.
Yeah.
You have to be able to be very confident.
I think people don't. It's hard for us to talk about how difficult that aspect of what we do is, because on the other hand, it sounds like we're whining, and it's like,
I know,
well, you
you
can just turn it off. But let's just say though that we understand that there are trade-offs.
Well, that's
in
what I
life.
do. That's like I don't.
But the thing is though, you can't not read it all the time.
Yeah.
And in the aggregate, and one reason you can't not read it is because to some degree it actually does affect you. Like if I never looked at any of the comments on anything that I put on social media, I would not be able to gauge if I'm hitting maybe a little too hard on certain things, or if people are interested or they're not interested. Like you do kind of have to keep tabs on it. And so what happens is you can tell yourself individually, it doesn't hurt me if they called me a rape apologist or misogynist, or they said your crossed eyes are ugly or whatever. Like usually each individual thing does not hurt, but in the aggregate, you feel this weight upon you. And I was hanging out with my mom the other day. And we were I think we were sitting in a restaurant or something, and we were having just normal human interaction. And I pick up my phone to sort of check in with things, and I see all these people are getting really pissed about something I posted, and they're saying all these things, and then I just put the phone down, and it's like it was the weirdest cognitive dissonance to then have to go back into this nice human interaction with my mom when my blood pressure had gone up, and I'm just like, and it's like, what's going on? And by the way, let me take this opportunity to put my PayPal link here, because I haven't tried to remind anybody at all, and I won't get any donations if I don't do that. But I do, everybody, I appreciate y'all. I do prefer PayPal over Super Chat just because YouTube takes so much, but Super Chat's great. You want to get your comments in there. If you donate to my PayPal, you can leave a comment, and I will read your first name and read the comment. And I'm putting that up right now. So thank you for that. And anyway, go ahead.
No, it's crazy how much you have to be able to separate the two. Because for me, like, I don't read a whole, like, even the people, like, I pointed out to somebody, said all of the insults, like if they're very mean, that like if someone's just like, you're disgustingly ugly and you're an abomination unto God.
Some of them are so over the top.
I can push that one to the side. That one doesn't bother me. I always tell the story about the number one comment that ever like kept me up at night was when someone's like, Brett seems like a nice guy. He's just not very good at this.
Yeah, that one would hurt.
That one hurt. That one hurt. But like in general, like the mean stuff you can brush off, but it's like it's like you said, it comes off like whining. It's part of the job. But most people who are anonymous then don't appreciate that when you don't have the ability to be anonymous, that it's a unique part of the work you do. Now, I do go out of my way to read, because my argument is like, look, we do a daily show. It's a variety show. My gauge for what we're going to cover is like, what does Mary find interesting? What do I find interesting? I'm not super like, the people that come to watch are coming to watch because they have decided that the stuff we find interesting to cover is something they want to engage with. I don't like, I've tried my best to like look at which videos do which videos get most views. It doesn't seem a lot of times like there's any rhyme or reason.
Let me tell you which videos do well. Anything with Amber Heard. Just start reporting on Amber Heard every single day.
Well, right now it's not Amber Heard for us.
I'm
right
joking.
now that's Rachel Zegler. now.
Oh, really? Oh,
That's
yeah, you mentioned that people are
yeah.
all into that. That's the Disney girl. Did she get fired recently or
No,
something happened to her?
no, like that was falsely reported that
Oh,
that
she's still
Snow
around.
White was yeah. I mean they're already done with principal photography on that. And the other reason you have to be okay with people having these comments is like, look, when we do these segments, like we're being critical of other people. In a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
cases, we're
No,
being
it's
critical out of
really
other
critical
people.
sometimes, yeah.
It would be hypocritical if you weren't willing to at least be able to take the criticism and people come into our comment section and I'll address the ones that are phrased politely or that push back on something I say. Not if they're mean, but if they say like, I think you're wrong, I'll be like, okay, but I disagree and here's why. And that's healthy. That's fine. But like the one thing that actually does get me annoyed actually is to what you said is like when people are like, don't cover this. I'm like, now I just want to cover it more. No, you
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
make me.
Um, yeah, I get that. I definitely get that at times.
Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, especially on my show, obviously, I'm very
Yeah.
hard hitting with people.
Yeah.
So it's a trade-off. Everything in life is a trade-off. I really think back to that famous comment by the philosopher Schopenhauer, and he said that human beings vacillate between two states, boredom and fear, and or boredom and anxiety, right? And so when I try to remind myself when I'm feeling all of the anxiety of just constantly existing in a social media realm and doing the YouTube and like all of it, like I just feel like I'm in a tornado all the time when I'm not
Yeah.
sleeping. And but I try to remind myself, you were bored out of your mind before you started this, so I mean, whatever.
There you go. And I'm actually like I'm not controversial like on social media. Like I keep my social media like
You're not, yeah, especially
My
your
Twitter is about
Instagram.
stuff I like. My Instagram is memes. And like I mean my Instagram's skating, but the stuff I share on story is just memes I find funny. And then Twitter, it's like I thought this movie was great, and that's like the least controversial thing you could be.
Nina Online, I wanted to acknowledge you because you left the super chat earlier, but then we kind of moved off the Dan Wooten thing. So I wanted to put this comment up. I'm not sure how well I could take all the negativity. Yeah, here's the
It
thing
gets
though.
you.
It gets you,
It
but
gets
you
you.
also get used to it in a strange way. I mean, I was just complaining about it, but it's kind of a weird thing where too, like before I got on, I started this YouTube stuff. And really before I started teaching as well, like I used to actually be an extreme, the people are going to think this is crazy or funny, but I was extremely conflict avoidant. And I was actually always the person when I was younger who was just like, okay, whatever. And yeah,
I'm
I'm
still that
sorry.
person.
And yeah, well, but and maybe performing, going on is being a little different. But I have noticed, like I used to think, man, I wish that I were one of these people that just could, just could say, I don't care what people think. And really having gone through all this stuff now with the topics I cover and
Yeah.
having journalists, even attacking me and misrepresenting what I do and stuff, like there is a certain callousness that you get after a while where it doesn't, it's just more to me in the aggregate. It's just kind of like a cloud settles in over time.
I've just become very like we've had people who have come like on like who do the show and they've done it a couple of times. They're like, I do not know how you do it 5 days a week.
Now,
Not
I
because of
don't
the
know. That is stamina. That is
not
stamina there.
like not because of the comments, but just because when you have to talk about such stuff every day, all day, you do have to develop a callus where it's like I said, if tomorrow someone came out and told me that Russell Brand and Taylor Swift dropped a nuclear weapon on another country, I'd be like, wow, that sucks. Like that's like I'm numb to it now, right? Like I'm like I'm just numb to so much of it, and that's not necessarily a good thing. That's what granted, we don't take breaks, but like hopefully over Christmas I'll get a break and that'll be good. But we're coming up on episode 500 not too long, and we've only been doing the show for it'll be 2 years in January. So it's like you do it for long enough, and some people are just built that way. Like Tim could do it all day, every day if he wanted to. He's a machine.
Is he on methamphetamine? Is that his
No,
secret?
he's on wanting to change the culture, and he feels very strongly about that. And when you feel very strong about something, I think that you've got like to the people who are very mission oriented, right? They're like, well, look, we're changing the culture. We're bringing light to these stories that are very important. We're talking about things that need to be talked about. People that are very, very mission oriented and believe that there's a strong reason behind what they do, they can go forth and do so almost endlessly. But it gets weird. But at the same time, I try to check myself. I'm like, look, you're not in a mine. You're not exerting massive physical labor every day.
Sure.
Like I've worked those jobs. I've worked jobs where I can do 12 hours a day doing this job. And I've worked physical jobs that were just as exhausting for different reasons. They're just less mentally exhausting. So it's a trade-off. So it's why I get so excited when I talk about when people are like, look, I listen to you while I'm at work and it helps me get through the workday. That's the biggest compliment that I think you can get when doing stuff like this, because I'm not here necessarily to change the world. I just want to be able to give somebody something to listen to that helps them get through the workday or entertains them. Like, I don't think that that's a bad reason to do something. So that's a good trade-off when you have to deal with all the people who want to tell you how you're evil or awful.
It is. It's funny you were talking about the manual labor thing. By the way, I'm putting your show up again.
I see it.
Culture Crisis. The manual labor thing is interesting because I've done quote unquote intellectual labor, which was teaching college for many years, and then this. We could laugh at the term intellectual labor, but you're using your mind. And then I've spent many years of my life waiting tables, serving at different restaurants. And I'm not claiming that is like being a minor. Like, that's the hardest, that's the hardest work. But like, it is hard. Any of you who've done it, it's hard. It is hard fucking labor when you're doing it. And what's weird is when I was doing the manual labor, I was always like, God, I can't wait until I can just like do something where I'm, I can just like sit down or whatever. And then when I was doing the intellectual labor, like
you
teaching or whatever, I'm like, God, I'm so sick of this, like having to think so hard and like come up with stuff to say. I just want to like zone out and like scrub something.
My favorite job that I've ever had, other than this, was delivering medications to doctors' offices, and like was just a driving job.
Oh, driving
where I spent 8 to 12 hours a day in a car driving all over the state of Minnesota. I loved that job.
But then your body starts to kind of hurt from like having to be in those positions all the time, right? Like, did you have a cushy chair or what did you do?
I skate I still skate every day.
Oh,
so there's a baseline of general pain when you skate every day anyways. So maybe you're just immune to it. But like, yeah, it's a trade-off, and everything is like it would be very easy for us to say like, look, you wouldn't be able to do this. You wouldn't be able to put up with all the negativity. But then that person is like, yeah, and you wouldn't be able to lift up the stuff that I do at my job either, right? Like, everybody's got their thing. But for us, it's just it is kind of funny to talk about, because I think that part of the digital age is learning that there's a lot of nihilism in just how mean people tend to be to one another when there's a screen barrier between you.
That's true. Okay, I wanted to recognize some, speaking of screen, some PayPal people. So I won't read your name, but thank you, Rebel, very much for that. I appreciate that big super chat or whatever. And then Mark says, love your videos and your live streams, General Tuggernaut. Oh, like that name. Good name.
I like it
so much.
There was a Tug simp earlier, and now Tuggernaut. That's good.
Tug has a lot of fans. Are y'all going to collaborate with him or something? Did I hear something about that? Maybe.
No, I think that would be very hard because he doesn't put his face on camera anyways. So
you'd have to show up in a costume.
That'd be cool. I mean, that would be cool if he came in costume. But yeah, like there's like we've been reaching out to more people. Also, like we got through some administrative hurdles and regained access to like the original email that had like just a bunch of stuff in there that I wasn't able to get to earlier. So like I've done a lot of my reaching out to people on social media. Like I've always preferred to reach out to people, in DMs or something like that, because it's just it's easier than I personally, I hate email. I never liked email, but like, we've got a lot of stuff coming up. We're booked out for guests like through October. So it's great.
Oh, well, great. Okay. So I wanted to bring up something random that just popped into my head because people are talking about Taylor Swift, and I'll have to look more specifically at what y'all are talking about, but it reminded me. Okay, I don't know anything about this Travis. Is it Kelsey? Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
I don't know anything about him because I haven't been following football lately and stuff. But let me just say this one thing: I saw him on his brother's podcast.
Yeah, they have a podcast together.
Okay, it was the two of them. Okay,
Yeah.
so he's sitting there and he's like grinning like a Cheshire cat, and he's talking about Taylor Swift and everything. And look, there's just something about it that made me feel a little like, is it just it felt a little like opportunistic, like he was really loving being able to brag about dating Taylor Swift. Am I way off on him? Like,
No,
what's
no.
going
I
on
mean,
there?
it's at this point now, anybody who dates Taylor Swift has to do it for the cultural cachet that comes from it, right? Like what I said. First of all, guys, we don't have to spend a lot of time on this. A lot of people give because she's such a ridiculously important part of popular culture right now that like every day I'm like, I hope we don't have to talk about her today. And then something comes up. Like Gavin Newsom did an interview where he said she's going to be unbelievably important to the next election cycle.
Oh
That's
no.
insane. But the point is like every day I'm like, there are days I'm like double checking. I'm like squinting at the news. I'm like, no Taylor Swift stories. No Taylor. But it out like today we did one. It was like the conservative. Remember the war on Christmas? Well, today we did the conservative war on Taylor Swift. But like we covered all the time. But right for her, what these guys need to do is like, look, she's probably not going to marry you. What I think they should do is you should start, instead of trying to be the one who gets her to settle down, they should start vying for who can be the worst so that she writes the most hard-hitting song about you, right? Because she's going to end up writing music about you anyways. So what you need to do is just be an absolutely atrocious boyfriend so that she writes really good songs.
What happened
about
to
you.
Maddie Healy? Like that was a hot minute.
Yeah.
I thought he was going to be like, I thought like she left her fiance or whatever,
Yeah.
that hot British guy. She left him for Maddie Healy, and then he was gone. Like, did Kelsey bump him out, or what happened?
No, I think that she I find it hard to believe that she doesn't do anything without checking a focus group first. But he's not exactly on brand for her or
He's
whatever.
kind of a nasty looking guy, or I don't know. Some women might think he's cute. Let me put his picture up here. But
they just went on the 1975 just went on indefinite hiatus. So
because he's sad that Taylor Swift dumped him?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm telling you, the next guy that dates Taylor Swift, you gotta leave the toilet seat up. You gotta be late to dinner. You gotta do everything wrong so that she just writes the gnarliest song about you, dude. Like everything, like undercook the food, forget her birthday. Just do it wrong so that way at least she writes a good song about you. You don't want to have a mediocre song written about you if you end up breaking up with Taylor Swift.
So this is the guy I was talking about. I was just surprised. Maybe he has a lot of charisma. I know that looks aren't everything, but like I didn't know who he was because I'm not really into music.
That's a horrible picture of him too.
Oh, it is? Okay, well,
Yeah.
I was fine. Okay, here's one. He's looking better there, and is like, there we go. I don't know. I just thought the other guy was so hot. So I don't know anything about Joe Alwyn, but every time I saw him and Taylor Swift together, I was like, my God, who is that smoking hot guy?
A better thing to look up if you want to know the extent of her fan base, there was this amazing Taylor Swift union infographic that was made where you can't tell if it's look up Taylor Swift unionization. And it's the most insane thing. And then the open letter that they write about or write Taylor Swift fans, Maddie Healy open letter.
Taylor Swift fans?
Yeah. And then like Maddie Healy open letter.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Dude, it's crazy. Like the entitlement
Who
of the
wrote
fans.
it? Who actually wrote it?
It's not even a single person. It's just the fan. Yeah, there they are. Like read that and tell me it's not the most. You can click on that.
Oh, you can't. Okay.
Yeah, you can go ahead and click on that. It's the most bonkers thing you'll ever read in your entire life.
Okay, so as dear Taylor, as concerned fans, we are writing to express our disappointment regarding recent events. You've been recently seen with and have welcomed to your stage Maddie Healy, the frontman of 1975. He has been involved in acts and controversies that deeply trouble us. From engaging in racist remarks, making offensive jokes, and admitting to watching degrading pornography. We got to cancel Allman. Yep. In which people of color are being. I heard about this because he made some joke about watching a certain kind of porn.
Yep.
Stereotypes, objectification, targets and hurt some people from the Jewish, Black, Chinese, Hawaiian, Inuit, LGBTQ plus communities.
He basically hurt everyone's feelings. He hit the trifecta of offensiveness.
I like how they highlight certain parts, to make sure they stand out.
It gets more insane. The more you read, the more insane it gets.
We believe in the capacity for growth and transformation. By acknowledging this letter, demonstrating genuine remorse, and committing to personal growth and education, you have the opportunity to make amends and contribute positive. That's so Orwellian, all of that.
Yep.
Wow, that's funny.
That's them telling you, like, look, we own you. And to be fair, she's very, she has a very strong hold over her audience and she encourages that. Yeah, it's crazy. Like, I would not want to, I don't know why anyone would want to be in a relationship with her. It's not like I don't even know what's in it
She's
for
kinda
her.
pretty.
I don't know what's in it for her though. Like, she's going to be the more famous one in all of her relationships. Like, is she really going to settle down? I don't know.
I don't know. It is interesting how she doesn't seem to have a type, because every guy, she seems like one of those who kind of is just maybe boomeranging from type to type,
Yeah.
because I don't feel like any guy that she's dated has been like any of the others. Like they all seem like very, very different.
There's a really funny meme where they show a picture of Travis Kelce with his previous girlfriend where he's wearing like neon clothes and looks kind of like he's trying to look hip. And now there's a picture of him with Taylor Swift and he's got a shaved head and a mustache. It says Travis Kelce started dating Taylor Swift and immediately started looking like a state trooper who turns the body camera off.
Oh, is this the one you're talking about here? Okay, hold on a second. Let me show you. Or this is the old picture with the other girlfriend. Okay, I put in two girlfriends. Is it this? Is it this one here?
It's not even, no, it's not even that. It's like him. He's like
no.
in neon colors. It's a really funny photo of him.
Oh well, I don't see it, but it's funny how some celebrities though, when they start dating each other, like they do change their style. Like you can do that with Brad Pitt is one people like to do that a lot with. Like he basically, like when he was with Gwyneth Paltrow, he had short, bright blonde hair just like her. Like they had the same cut at one point.
Yeah.
And then with Jennifer Aniston, and then when he was with Angelina, it was like dark, more intense.
Look at what Kanye West does to all the women he dates. They all end up starting to look exactly like him.
Lewd acts in the back of boats in Italy.
Well, if that's wrong, I don't want to be right, he should say. That's
Oh man. I mean, maybe, it did occur to me today when I was looking at his Instagram, Donda's place or whatever. And I'm always like, I feel like it's some really random stuff that they put up there, but it is always attention getting. Like I'm always checking in to see, okay, did Bianca wear a new crazy outfit today? And
the one Italy? Of them, did you see the one of them at church where she's wearing, it looks like a condom?
Oh, well, yeah, I kind of think, but it was a white?
It was black.
It was black. Yeah,
the
black thing right
now. It was crazy. That's but he's always been that way. And I will never not love Kanye's music. I don't care what anyone says.
Well, and he has been outspoken for a long time on all kinds of things. I remember, like, I've been around a while, so I'm old school. I remember the George Bush doesn't care about black people.
Yep. Oh, yeah. I mean, his a lot
George
of the
Bush
talk,
doesn't care about black people.
A lot of the talk on Graduation, on the album Graduation, like, is a lot to do with, like, he mentions racial inequality a lot back then, and it felt a lot more honest than when you hear that stuff from artists these days, because it wasn't in to talk about it at that time. The song All Falls Down is a fantastic examination of consumerist culture and how in a lot of ways we end up being the products of our own wants, end up being the products of our own demise. Like he's got great music. The song Jail 2, which has Marilyn Manson on it, like is one of my favorite songs in the last several years. And that's off an album that, is a later part of his career. He's still doing really, really well considering that he's been essentially unpersoned. Another example of someone who the media decided one day we would just, abandon, and for random reasons, right? Like he was offensive and he said some mean things, as if people haven't been saying offensive, mean things forever.
That I've laughed before that at the interview with when he went on Alex Jones' channel, and like that, even apart from whether you think he should have been censored or not censored, or like he should have gotten in trouble or not gotten in trouble or whatever, that will never cease to crack me up when Alex Jones is trying to bail him out of something he's just said, and he's like, and Alex Jones is like, now you're not in favor of Hitler or anything, right? And Kanye's like, well.
And like when Alex Jones is the voice of reason offering you a life raft, like you're screwed, dude.
And then Kanye goes, he's like, every human has something of value, especially Hitler. That especially always gets me.
It's like he's a character, and like when I hear stuff like that that's so outlandish
Oh
that
my
nobody
God.
would get behind it. It to me 10 years ago it would have just been considered transgressive, and that they
Yeah.
were doing it to be edgy, right?
Yeah. And
Like, think about the punk artists who used to wear swastikas because they knew that they would be hated for wearing it, right? Like there was
yeah, no, I
artists that
understand with that, people like that. The thing is with Kanye that kind of the thing that bugs me, and again, I'm not saying he should be canceled or whatever. I'm just talking about like my own personal approval, social disapproval. The thing that bothers me is I know what his religion is, that Black Hebrew Israelite, we can
yeah.
call it a sect or whatever, and I know that they have a whole anti-Jew
Yeah.
theology, and I don't understand when
Does he
Kanye.
consider himself a Black Hebrew Israelite?
Yeah, so
Does he?
so
Okay.
their theology, part of their theology, and my apologies if there's someone in the audience, you know it better than I do, but from what I've read, they believe that that Black people
Yes.
are the real descendants, they're the real Jews, and that what we think of as Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, are basically like European, Russian interlopers. And I don't even I don't know genealogy and all that shit, but I'm just saying, here's my problem with Kanye, is that he keeps talking about, or he kept talking about the Jew media and all the Jews in the media. And my question is always, okay, but what is the punchline? Are you wanting to take Jews out of the media? Are you saying that there's nepotism, that they're blocking out Black people and they're just giving jobs to other Jews? Like, what is the point?
Yeah.
I can never quite get to the end of the road when I'm listening to him with like, where are you going with this, except some kind of weird racist shit.
A lot of them like really look up to Farrakhan, and that's
Yeah, it's that whole kind of, yeah. So
And it's like, it's weird because that's somebody who got like has been valorized to a lot of them for a long time. Like Chris Rock, like would mention, like, I remember there was like a skit from Chris Rock back in like 96 when he released Rollin' with the New. It was the audio version of Bigger and Blacker, which is one of the greatest comedy albums of all time. And he talks about like all of the positive Black leaders at the Million Man March. And he says like Jesse, Farrakhan. And I was like, at that age, I didn't know who that was. And then the older I got, I'm like, wow, that's an extremely divisive person to put on a pedestal.
yeah, I think that has something to do with the fact that Malcolm X, before he was
Yes.
excommunicated from the Nation of Islam, like he was such a big a civil rights leader, and so I think that kind of came down. So AJ, you're saying not funny. Well, no, I'm laughing. I'm not laughing at what Kanye said, like, oh, I think it's funny, to be talking about how you love Hitler. I'm laughing at sort of his in that Alex Jones interview, like how completely
Ridiculous it is.
out of touch.
Yes.
Yeah, like to say something like that is just like that. Even Alex Jones is like, dude, you're going too far. So I don't know. I think that there is real, unfortunately, I think with his religious perspective, I think there is some real, what we would say is racism there. Now, if he wanted to stop talking about the Jewish thing and just talk about the fact that artists often get ripped off by executives in these industries, then okay, we could have that conversation. But when you're pointing out just how many Jews there are, I don't get the point.
And you lose the average person who's like, bro, like, you're just no.
Right.
It doesn't work. When you start broad brushing like that, it doesn't work. And it's but it's like I will still always love his music. I'm not going to stop listening to his music because he has objectionable views on stuff.
Yeah, and I don't believe in censorship for anyone. Like I really don't. And so unless you are, I guess this is what people who think he should be censored would say, unless you're defaming someone. And I guess their perspective is, well, you're defaming. The question would be, can you defame such a whole group of people to the point where you're committing the same kind of offense that like Amber Heard did when she was defaming Johnny Depp? Like, I guess you could get into a philosophical conversation about that, but I'm always very uncomfortable with broad restrictions against speech. And I also think there is something to the idea that people are going to have their views quietly if they can't have them openly. And in some ways, it would be better to know what someone's really thinking. Like maybe in some ways, it's better that we know that Kanye is kind of this crazy racist in some way. Like maybe so, you know, I don't know.
Then you can decide whether that's an artist you want to support or not support. Like I said, I watch movies from people who have been in trouble. I watch like I just have a hard time not consuming something that I've loved in the past just because the person has done, said, or had views that are objectionable. Because one of the things you have to learn how to do, especially if you disagree with a lot of people in Hollywood, is that you have to learn how to separate art from artist. And
Yeah,
that's,
you do, or you won't watch
yeah.
anything. That's kind of
Yeah.
what we were talking about earlier when we were talking about Me Too, and is that a lot of artists, not all of them, but a lot of them, a lot of are crazy. A lot of normal people are crazy, right? And so, like for instance, Mel Gibson. I just watched Braveheart again the other day for like the 20th time. I love that movie. I love
Yep.
Mel Gibson movies, and I also know that he's got a really problematic. He's another one who has problematic history with saying anti-Jewish things and whatever. So like.
And that was how long, like, and that's like, did you know that Robert Downey Jr. gave a speech where he brought Mel Gibson on stage and he says, like, how long, like, he apologized. He's tried to make amends for what he said back in what was it, like the early 2000s that he said that, right? Like, he's like, how long are we going to, like, leave this man out in the cold? Because he talked about how, look, when Robert Downey Jr. says, when my career was falling apart, he offered me a life raft and helped get me back to where I am now. Like, and he was trying to extend the same courtesy to them. Like, when somebody says something that's objectionable or hateful, how long do we hold it against them? Do we just no longer believe in the idea of personal growth? If he hasn't done or said anything awful since then, is there not room for grace or for the idea of a comeback story? Or like, we used to love the idea of a redemption arc, like where somebody can learn from their mistakes and come back a better person. Now, is that Kanye's arc? No, I don't think so. I don't think that that's what's going on here. But, you know, if you're somebody who's done or said something that's offended a lot of people, there are going to be people that are going to look at it and say, look, I'm going to cut bait. I'm not willing to do that. But, you know, like, if I think that we deprive ourselves of great art and great, in great interactions like that, when we don't allow people the opportunity to, move on or do better.
Yeah, you know, in Mel Gibson's case, correct me if I'm wrong, unlike Kanye, he was not making public pronouncements.
No.
What happened with him is that he got drunk and he got pulled over for a DUI, and
Yeah.
he knew his life was going to be over because he said to them, I'm on thin ice with my wife, and she said one more fuck up and she's leaving me, and she did leave him. And so he was like having a meltdown, and so he starts saying this anti-Jew stuff to the cops. Now,
Yeah.
again, like, I don't think that's okay, and but in this case, I think it was even in some ways different too, that he's not going out there promoting this anti-Jew perspective. Now, I know some Jews had problems with the Passion of the Christ, and that's like way afield, but like that, the Passion of the Christ, it was following the Gospels. So, I mean, if you have a problem with that, then you have a problem with the Bible, the Gospels, which is fine, can argue that. But I didn't see where the Passion of the Christ added anything that was anti-Jew that wasn't in the story. So
it's like with a lot of these Christians, or think about, did you ever hear the tape of Alec Baldwin just absolutely saying the worst shit you've ever heard to his daughter?
He called her a pig or something.
Yeah,
right?
he called her disgusting. He basically called her like a disgusting pig. And it's like everyone just kind of forgets, right? Like, if you're like on the in crowd, if you're part of the in crowd, you're allowed to just say awful stuff and get away with it because people will eventually just forget. Or they just, the media won't keep reporting on it. But every time Mel Gibson has a new project come out, what happens is the reports start again. Anti-Semite Mel Gibson said this. I was like, well, okay, you could keep doing that, but there's plenty of people. Like I said, just every time there's an article written about Mike Tyson now, say convicted rapist Mike Tyson had a new episode of Hot Ones. No, that's not how they frame it, because they're picking and choosing what they want to report on, because that's how the media sees it.
Yeah, and I'm always amazed with this Me Too stuff, for instance, that there are so many guys that I know, because I know their biography, like big rock stars and like big rock stars in the past and so forth, that they have stuff because I've read a lot of their bios. I'm just like, nobody's caught on to this yet. Like every time I see Jimmy Page trending on
Yeah.
Twitter, I'm like, have they got him yet?
Yeah, I mean, I think that about most rock stars, right? I'm like, they wake up every day scared out of their
They
mind
should be
that
scared.
today is the day that somebody finally comes forward and says, like, yes, I was on that tour bus back in 1980. Well, like, no, like it came out about, who was it? Nick Carter. Like one of
Oh
the
yeah,
one,
I have not looked into that, but I know smart people that I'm friends with who tell me that he's probably getting falsely Me Too'd as well.
like
I don't
there's
know,
like
but
crazy, like the more than one, but it's saying, like, like a lot of these rock stars from back then are like, yes, there were some ladies on my tour bus back in 1989, and no, we didn't check IDs before we let them on.
right,
And you
right,
just know that
exactly.
was a thing.
Exactly. Yeah, and again, this is controversial to say it now, but not too long ago that was not seen as that big of a deal. I'm not saying that like my parents when I was 15 years old in the 90s, that if I'd gone to a concert and came home and said I fucked Marilyn Manson, that they would have been like, yeah. But like also there was a sense like that you just kind of like, I'm talking about like among younger people at the time, you shrug it off or whatever, or like people didn't see that as assaulting children now
Yeah.
that they do now. Now. I'm not saying that's okay, but there is a certain extent to where
The culture's changed.
we can't, things have changed so fast. We
Yeah.
can't necessarily hold people to the same degree of retroactive responsibility that people seem to think you should now.
Yeah, it's a crazy world that we live in. When you like, I just imagine every one of who was the other one who had, like, was it Steven Tyler, or was it, who was the one who, there's some crazy allegations against one of them with like a 16-year-old that were like way beyond.
Yeah, well, so Steven Tyler, what he did was not technically illegal, but what
was the
well, he was having sex with a 16-year-old.
Okay.
But what he did, but he actually had, so he wanted she was his girlfriend. Now we say that's wrong or right or whatever, right? But she was his girlfriend, and he wanted to be able to take her across state lines without getting into some trouble in some different states because he was going on tour. So he had her parents sign over guardianship of her to him. So she is his girlfriend and he's also her guardian so that he could not worry about legal repercussions. Now, of course, I think that's weird and fucked up. I also have to ask, though, what's going on with some of these parents, too? Like,
they're just like, yes, I would like to hand over my daughter to you. Like, gosh, she's a pain in the ass. Would you just take her on tour with you, will you?
Well, the same thing, wasn't it kind of the same with R. Kelly? I'm not an expert on his case, but weren't there some parents, and again, doesn't make it okay, but parents that were basically like pimping out their daughters to him?
I think Aaliyah was 14 when they got together.
Yeah, no, she was young. Yeah. And then some of these women that have accused him, I think too, that's also, again, the case that the parents were kind of involved. I don't know. Like there's so much shadiness when you get into these Hollywood entertainment industry things, like shadiness, not just from stars, but I mean, from other people. Everyone wants a piece of it. I had a conversation with Marilyn Manson's former assistant, Paula, and she's been on my show before, and she very much supports him, and she thinks that it's a hoax against him. And she actually lived with him for a while when he was with Evan Rachel Wood, and she's talked about it and how, basically, I'm paraphrasing, but Evan Rachel Wood was kooky and Manson didn't abuse her. Well, anyway, here's the point. She told me that when you are, even as an assistant or a friend of one of these people, when you are in their circles, you become so cynical because you see how they are constantly inundated with and surrounded by people who just want what they can get from them and just like it brings out the worst in human behavior, not from other people,
not just from them, but from other people.
Right.
And that has to make them cynical and
kind of hardened and calloused too. Yeah.
Weary of human connection, because I mean, they say that a lot about celebrities, right? Like, or people of immense wealth. Like the happiest couples are not the ones who got married after the guy or the woman got famous. It's the ones who were together before they got famous and had the money, because you're not as weary of their intentions, because you're not just going to assume that there's an ulterior motive there.
Right. Which is something, and they have to assume, and I think so, and there's everything becomes transactional, I think, and so you have, so like that's what I'd like to point out too about the kind of, not all, but a lot of the women that surround these and are attracted to these rock stars, these comedians, or these movie stars, is that let's not be naive about how a number of them, maybe not all, but a number of them, they're very cold and calculating, even if they're sorry, not admitting to it.
Yes.
That might be
Perfect.
time. That might be time to sign off. We're
Yep.
we're now at 2 hours, so
Yep.
I think we'll say goodbye. So what I want to do is recognize my mods. Well, I choked up after sneezing. Thank you to Vanessa. Thank you to AJ. Thank you to Laura B. Thank you to Rebel Bird. And
Thank you, guys.
one of you guys, will you put up the link to Pop Culture Crisis again one more time so I can post it? And yeah, how do you decide like every like morning what you're going to talk about, or throughout the day, or you?
Yeah, so we're live at 3 every day. So I'm up usually in the morning at like around 9, and I start looking into, I've got a massive list of places where I aggregate information from. And me and Mary will send stories back and forth, and we'll cobble together stories like from various places. And essentially what it is we have 4 stories that we decide on every day that are going to get like a full length discussion out of, right? So 15 minutes talking about the ins and the outs of this story with whoever's on that day. And then there's also 3, 4, sometimes 5 smaller stories, which I think are have interesting information, but maybe more about conveying the info in the article rather than about having a long-winded discussion about it. So you're covering 8, 9 things a day every single day. So you start in the morning and you start organizing what you're going to talk about, figuring out like what order is it best with, because like when the show hits about the hour mark, when you're in about topic 2, that's when you're at your highest viewership. So you want to make sure that those first 2 topics are really solid, really something that grabs the audience's attention. So it's a lot of fun. It's a challenge to figure out that much to talk about in these worlds, because I'm not necessarily like, Mary loves to talk about couples and relationships and things to do with celebrity, things to do with celebrities. And that way I like stories that have I've found the writer's strike and everything fascinating and very, very interesting, and the directors and the actors. Now, that's not always like, sometimes that's inside baseball and people are like, why are we talking about this? But it's about figuring out what you think people would like to listen to. And then also taking into account that there are going to be things that you have to talk about, like Taylor Swift, even if necessarily some people don't understand why. The point is that, they're relevant to the culture. And when people talk about whether you're in a culture war or not, I don't know where I stand on the idea that I'm fighting something like that. I think I just want to go find interesting things to talk about and then talk about them. And I think that's what matters. So yeah, it's really an all day process. Like you start in the morning and then you get everything ready. But by the time you hit 3 o'clock, you want to have everything set to go by at least 1, because otherwise you spent all your day looking and you have to have enough time to read into it. Hopefully, if you get a good start the night before, you've been able to get in the basic info and then start doing broader research.
Yeah, and when the line that we have to walk with what we do is that you never have time, unless it's something that you're really doing a deep dive into, like some of the stuff that I do, but you rarely have time to research everything as much as you would like. But you have to go ahead and talk. And so there's so many times when I'll say something and then afterward I'll learn that I was wrong, or I said something, I'd misspoken, or that it turns out there was more to it and everything. And inevitably there are people in the chat or in the comments who will be like, you should have looked into this more and whatever. And I just want to be like, do y'all not understand? Like
when it's every day, like a lot of times what I point out is like when it's every day, like the stuff that comes out, it'll come out like right as we're going live. So then the point is like, we'll cover, like, so then we'll do an update the next day and we'll talk about that the next day. Yeah, that is like, for me, it's about making it more of like a general discussion. Like, here are the bullet points of this story. Let's talk about what it means. What does this mean for the people involved? What does it mean for us as people who are the fans of these industries? What does it mean for society at large? I like those questions because there's something that everyone can talk about, right? You don't have to know all the ins and the outs of every story. You just have to know that these, the basics, and that these stories have cultural impact. And what does that mean to you? What does that mean to you who's part of this conversation about it? Because that's what it's interesting, right? Like people might care a little bit about the stories, but a lot of them, they just want to know what the people who they're watching, what do they think of it? And then they want to compare that to what they think of, what their opinions are on of it. And that's what makes for interesting discussions.
Right, right. And somebody was saying to the chat usually chimes in with additional specifics, and you'll have a nice chat, rowdy chat.
we have a like, look, compared to a lot of other chat. Now you guys have a very nice chat as well. I was in there. I checked in on the chat during the 5-minute break.
Good mods.
I said hello. We have no mods on our. We don't use mods on our channel. And we have a very, like, half the time they're having their own discussions. Like they're out there. They're like, what are you guys talking about? We're having our own conversations in here. I see Andrina right there. Yes, we have a great chat. And that's the fun of it, right? Is there's I keep one eye on the chat the whole day, and people have their own comments, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm grateful that I have great mods. Really, really, the challenge with being my mod is to keep one person out who takes many forms. There's one particular person who really hates me, and I think that she pops up in various guises.
Okay.
All right. Well, that is it for tonight. Thank you, HA. Thank you to Vanessa. Thank you, Rebel Bird and Laura B. And you can find all of our links if you didn't get a chance to catch them already. You can find all of our links below in the description. Brett's channel, his Twitter, my PayPal, my Patreon, and we will see you next week.
Thank you so much, guys.
Bye, everybody.